Welcome to this explainer. Look, when a major dispute erupts between management and employees, the immediate reaction is almost always emotional. It instantly becomes this deeply polarized us versus them narrative, right? But as professionals and focused learners, we really need to look beyond those immediate gut-level reactions. Today, we're going to analyze workplace disputes structurally. We're going to put on a set of theoretical lenses that will completely change how you diagnose organizational friction from here on out.
So, to get us started, I want you to imagine a high-stakes workplace conflict. Picture a factory floor where operations have just ground to a sudden, complete halt. Now, think about this. Why might two different, seasoned managers look at that exact same event, people standing outside holding picket signs, and see completely different realities? One sees a malicious betrayal of the company family, while the other sees a perfectly normal, maybe even necessary negotiation tactic. How can they look at the exact same strike and see two entirely different things?
To figure that out, we're going to use a real-world case study to really anchor our analysis today. We're going to be looking at the 2024-2025 Samsung India labor dispute at their manufacturing facility in Sriperumbudur. This was a highly publicized, pretty protracted dispute over union recognition and working conditions. Now, to be clear, we are absolutely not here to take sides on this issue. Instead, we're using this as a neutral canvas to apply some of the absolute most influential theories in industrial relations.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. We'll start with the Samsung India dispute, explore the Unitary and Pluralist frames, examine Dunlop Systems' model, decode the strike, and then we'll finish up with some highly practical HR takeaways.
Section 1. The Samsung India dispute, a catalyst for analysis.
This specific strike is a perfect example for us because it involved a little bit of everything, from demands for union recognition to actual work stoppages and legal battles. It's complex, it's messy, and it is the exact type of situation where human resource professionals desperately need theoretical detective lenses to make sense of the chaos. So, what exactly are these lenses? Well, they stem from a concept formalized by British sociologist Alan Fox back in the 1960s called a frame of reference. A frame of reference is essentially the subjective conceptual structure through which we view workplace reality. It's the set of built-in assumptions you carry around in your head about how the world of work is actually supposed to operate. And these frames are incredibly powerful, mostly because they subconsciously condition your attitudes and dictate your behavior when conflict inevitably pops up. Fox identified two primary frames that are absolutely crucial for us today.
Section 2. The Unitary frame. Conflict as a disease.
So, if you operate from a unitarist frame of reference, you assume the workplace is essentially a unified team, or even a family. There is one single source of legitimate authority, and that is management. In this view, there's a natural, baked-in harmony of interests between the employers and the employees. Because everyone is supposedly pulling in the exact same direction, a unitarist views conflict as completely abnormal. It's just a temporary, avoidable dysfunction. If there's a dispute, a unitarist diagnoses it as a breakdown in communication, a silly misunderstanding, or maybe the illegitimate intrusion of outside agitators like trade unions stirring up trouble where there shouldn't be any. For them, employee loyalty belongs exclusively to the company.
Section 3. The Pluralist frame. Structural balances of power.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between the two mindsets. Just look at how these frames lead to entirely opposite conclusions. Where the unitary frame sees a family dealing with abnormal conflict, the pluralist frame sees a diverse coalition of interest-bearing groups. A pluralist recognizes that management and employees have overlapping but very distinct and sometimes competing interests. They don't have to be best friends, they just need to function together. Therefore, conflict isn't some kind of disease. It's structural, it's inevitable, and it is entirely legitimate. Because of the sheer power imbalance between a massive corporation and an individual worker, the pluralist views trade unions not as intruders, but as highly functional, completely necessary institutions that balance power through collective bargaining.
Section 4. Dunlop Systems Model, the structural plumbing of the workplace.
Okay, so we've talked about Alan Fox's subjective frames of reference, basically how people think about work. Now, let's look at the actual structural mechanics through the eyes of Harvard sociologist John Dunlop. Dunlop was heavily influenced by the sociological theory of social systems developed by Talcott Parsons. He conceptualized industrial relations as an analytical subsystem of society. Just like we have an economic system or a political system, Dunlop argued that industrial relations is its own distinct system with its own moving parts, designed to process inputs and generate a very specific output.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that Dunlop actually reduced his sociological theory into a functional equation. I know it looks like math, but it's pure social science. R equals F of A, T, E, S, and I.
The R here is the ultimate output of the entire industrial relations system, the web of rules. Every single workplace generates rules: wage rates, working hours, safety protocols, dispute procedures, you name it. Dunlop said these rules don't just appear out of thin air. They are a direct function of specific interacting variables.
Let's break down those variables really quickly. The rules are produced by the actors, that's managers, workers, and government agencies, interacting within 3 specific environmental contexts. Those contexts are the technological realities of the workplace, the economic and market constraints they face, and the distribution of power among those actors. Finally, all of this is held together by an ideology. This is a shared understanding that integrates the whole system and keeps it from completely falling apart. Basically, if the actors don't share at least a baseline ideology, the system breaks down.
Section 5. Decoding the Samsung strike. 3 pairs of glasses.
So the crucial point is this. We now have our 3 pairs of glasses: the unitary frame, the pluralist frame, and the systems model. Look at how the exact same real-world event yields 3 entirely different diagnoses. If a unitary manager looks at the striking workers in Sri Perumbudur, they see a tragic breakdown of common purpose and view the striking workers or union leaders as agitators, disrupting the team. A pluralist manager looks at the exact same picket line and sees legitimate competing interests over wages and representation, viewing the union as a necessary mechanism to balance power through bargaining. Meanwhile, the systems analyst steps back entirely. They aren't looking at the emotion. They examine the breakdown in the web of rules. They look at how changing market contexts or power dynamics disrupted the shared ideology, requiring new dispute resolution institutions to forge new rules altogether.
Section 6. Practical takeaways for HR, beyond technical compliance.
So how can organizational leaders and HR professionals actually use these theories practically to navigate real-world tensions? Well, it goes far beyond simply knowing the law. The absolute most vital takeaway from analyzing these frames is this: technical legal compliance must be paired with relational legitimacy. Think about it. A management decision might be perfectly legal and formally authorized by the company rules, but if the employees are operating from a pluralist frame and feel their legitimate interests, their dignity, or their need for fair procedure are being ignored, that technically legal decision will still generate massive resistance, low morale, or even a strike. You simply cannot cure a fundamentally broken process just with cheerful corporate communication.
To build that relational legitimacy, HR professionals must consistently ask these 5 key questions when intervening in a dispute. First, what legal framework and internal policy apply? That is your baseline. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, who is affected and what legitimate pluralist interests do they hold? Third, what evidence supports the proposed decision? Then, moving to the 4th question, what procedure will actually protect fairness and ensure proper documentation? And finally, how will the organization transparently implement and review the decision? Answering these questions ensures your interventions are not just lawful, but operationally realistic and genuinely credible to the workforce.
And that brings us to the end of our structural analysis of workplace conflict. I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Think about the very last time there was friction in your own organization. Which frame of reference was management actually using? Were they expecting a unified family dynamic in a situation that clearly required a pluralist negotiation? Understanding these hidden lenses is the very first step to truly resolving conflict. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep learning, and I will see you next time.